Nation discrimination. For more, I'm joined by Treasurer Josh Frydenberg. Treasurer, the government needs the support of these two backbenchers. How are you going to navigate this?
Oh, we continue to talk to our colleagues and continue to present to the Parliament, Koch, important pieces of legislation. Among our many pieces of legislation this week is protections for our critical infrastructure from cyber attacks. Also high-risk terrorist offenders. We've got legislation to protect the community from them. There's a range of measures that we have before the Parliament which are going to be important, not just to Australia's national security, but Australia's economy as well. And with respect to some of those colleagues that you referred to, discussions are ongoing.
OK, but state governments and private companies have already enforced vaccine mandates requiring jabs for things like work, travel, going to the pub. Would the government ever overturn that?
Well, these are matters for state governments. That's their focus, and that's their decisions.
You can't handball it. Federal government has been very vocal on...
We don't make those laws.
No.
We don't make those laws.
I know, but earlier, months in the past, the Treasurer, you, the Prime Minister have all said, yes, it's every employer's right to mandate vaccinations. We want everyone to be vaccinated. Now you seem to be backing off.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm not backing off, the need for Australian people to get the jab. And I think it's been a great success, our voluntary vaccination program that has seen Australia pass the 85% threshold, double dose. That's wonderful news. And in those states and territories where there has been extended lockdowns, the ACT, New South Wales and Victoria, those vaccination rates are even higher. So our focus has been rolling out that vaccine to as many people as possible. Right. And as you know, that's allowed our economy to open up. So that's our focus. It's never been a mandatory vaccination program. It's always been a voluntary one, and I think that's been to good effect.
But you've said on this program in the past, as the Prime Minister has, that every employer has the right to mandate mandatory vaccinations at their workplace to protect their workers. Do you still agree with that?
Well, I absolutely agree that those employers have those rights, and so do the state governments under their own public health orders. I think it's been really effective, to be honest, to see the vaccine uptake increase, to see those restrictions ease. And I was out in the CBD in Melbourne over the weekend, and it was pumping. The restaurants were open, people were moving around from venue to venue, and obviously that's good news for our economy as well. And as you know, Koch, we've got an announcement today about allowing more skilled workers to come in, more international students to come in. That's the next stage of our opening up plan, and one of the reasons why we can do that safely is because the vaccination rates in Australia are so high.
Totally agree, and we've got to keep them high. But are we seeing our future in Europe at the moment? Countries that have said, we're not going to go into lockdown again, as they've gone into winter, like Austria. Netherlands have introduced a curfew. There's been a spike in cases, not in deaths, but in infections in Germany and the UK. Can we withstand lockdowns next winter? Can the economy withstand it?
Well, as I've said to you before, we want to look forward, not back, and looking back means the lockdowns that we've seen, and we don't want those into the future. So that's why the booster shots are so important, and we've been able to secure that vaccine. So people should be encouraged to get the booster shot when they're eligible. But I think we can live safely with the virus. Of course, there will be illnesses. Of course, there will be hospitalisations and tragically even some deaths. But the alternative to see economy-wide lockdowns, to see people confined to their homes, to see a repeat of the curfews, that's not on, Koch. I think that had a big impact, not just on terms of job losses, but it also had what Patrick McGorry has termed an impact on the shadow pandemic and people's well-being. And so it's not just preventing COVID and the illness is not the only health outcome we should be focused on. We should also be focused on people's general well-being as well.
OK, it's spiking in Europe. As you said, you're opening the borders to skilled migrants, international students, tourists. how are you going to ensure that we're protected from those European outbreaks over their winter, our summer?
Well, again, people who come to Australia need to be double vaxxed, and that is a requirement that applies, and therefore you don't have to go through the usual quarantine practices. And as you know, the international students are a big part of our economy, worth some $40 billion, and skilled migrants play a critical role. Last week I sat down with many of Australia's leading CEOs and company chairpersons, and their single biggest issue, the most pressing issue for them, was about allowing the borders to reopen and skilled workers to come back in, because we do have workforce shortages. Job ads are now 30% higher than they were at the start of the pandemic, and that has a real impact on the economy. So the sooner we can open safely, the better, I think, for the economy and indeed, for people's jobs.
Treasurer, no, you've got to go. Other commitments. Really appreciate your time. Thank you. Here's now.
Good to be with you, Koch.